The story begins with this guy telling us that his favorite game is Paradise, an MMORPG virtual reality game where the continent called Nas is being invaded by the Demon King and his army. After several years of death and destruction left by the war, a very strong player appeared to defeat the Demon King and his troops. Basically, that's the plot of the game in the guy's words. He also tells us that when he gets home from work, he always starts playing, and that's been his routine for more than 10 years or so, clarifying that he knows the game so well that there are bugs or errors that only he knows, which he has taken advantage of for his own benefit. The man was so addicted to the game that he died without even realizing it. I mean, he died playing his favorite game. But it's okay, he reincarnated in the game world. What he didn't expect was to reincarnate as this chubby little guy, because he says that everyone who reincarnates does it in cool people, and he got this here. We meet Hayes, who apparently is the personal servant of the protagonist, who, in fact, is called Jared in this life. Jared is a little disappointed because the boy who previously occupied that body had done nothing with his life. He was super obese and had a very low level of magic. Literally, he was a complete loser. But he was the owner of some lands that he had inherited from his father, which disappoints him more because, according to him, a war that will bring famine and poverty to the world will soon break out, and, as the owner of a small territory, he will be attacked by people looking for food. But he remembers that he is in a world that he knows almost perfectly, and there he finally reacts by deciding to try to solve everything, since the knowledge he obtained during all those years playing Paradise is the most powerful weapon he can count on at this moment. So he sets to work, first looking for a way to increase his magic because currently it is at 1 level. To do this, he needs a necklace that his father had inherited from him because he does not have enough magic to invoke what he needs without the help of an object. But the protagonist searches and searches for the necklace and does not find it. When he asks Hayes about it, she finds it immediately. He thanks her and the girl is excited and happy that Jared has so much energy today. Then Jared breaks the necklace and invokes a malevolent spirit named Isabella. The protagonist is a little scared but calms down because he knows that Isabella does not like cowards. She insults him and says very hurtful things to him, such as disgusting human, among others. In the end, she asks him what his desire is. The protagonist tells her that he wants the eyes of the mind, an ability that allows him to see the attributes and emotional state of people, among other things, depending on the level of magic of the wearer. She tells him that he is a very arrogant and greedy human. But if he is willing to pay the price for such an ability, she will gladly give it to him. If it is wealth, she will take it, and if it is his family, she will kill them. Do you understand that? That is the deal. The protagonist accepts and begins to think about his most precious thing, which to Isabella's surprise is his first kiss, because in his previous life, despite being 34 years old, he never was able to give one. Isabella goes into kiss mode and, although she does not want to, she gives him his first kiss, sealing the contract and giving him the promised ability. She gets very angry but can do nothing because that is the rule of the contract. Later, the protagonist tells us that he will use that power to manage his territory because, according to Jared's memories, it is a poor, coal, and rank F territory called Cribia, making it difficult to cultivate but full of bandits and beasts that the protagonist sees as an opportunity to level up. But before he needs to put everything in order to start his story, the protagonist asks Hayes to bring him all the documents related to the territory. She does it without any problems, and when Hayes hands over the documents, she apologizes to him. The protagonist is surprised that she is apologizing to him. But when he looks at Jared's memories, he sees that every time he was angry or upset, he always hit her and told her that she was useless, unloading his anger on her. Still, she never abandoned him and was always loyal to him. With this in mind, the protagonist takes charge of the girl and apologizes to her, telling her that from now on he has changed, and they cry while embracing. He also decides to lose weight by eating some herbs that taste terrible, but Hayes is there to cook him a spectacular steak to get rid of the bad taste in his mouth. He thanks her. The protagonist uses the eye of the mind on Hayes, analyzing all her attributes, and sees that the girl would be very effective as a healing mage, which he plans to make her do later. He also tells us that she has an unrequited love that apparently is him, but he tells us that at the moment he will be busy with other things and that love will come later, that is. For now he will put her in the friend zone while Isabel appears out of nowhere telling him to give her back the ability because, according to her, he had cheated her because a kiss in exchange for that ability was not fair. But the protagonist refuses, and she tells him that she will torment him all the time until he gives it back to her. But this doesn't matter to the protagonist. Later, we meet Gragas, who is the chief guard of Lord Jared and begins to harass the girls until Sir Lacquas arrives, who asks him to leave the girls alone and to stay away from them. Gragas takes it badly and insults him, causing Lacquas to also get angry. When they are about to fight, they are stopped by the Knight Orin, who is old but apparently respected. After that, the meeting begins, and everyone present is surprised to see the protagonist a little thinner and reading the report that was given to him, something he never did because he spent his time talking to Gragas and always drinking at meetings. Gragas tries to offer the protagonist a drink, but you know he is not the same anymore, so he gets angry and with an attack he breaks the bottle of liquor, telling him that from now on he will not tolerate any lack of respect towards him, angering the guy a little. Jared tells Gragas that due to his crimes and using his authority to extort the poor, he is officially out of the guard and will pay for everything. This surprises him a lot, and he tries to run but is attacked by the protagonist with a fireball, knocking him out. Sir Laquis is surprised because Jared had used 4-level magic, a very powerful magic, and he cannot believe that the protagonist, who until now had been useless, is using something like that. Then the protagonist names Sir Laquis as the new chief guard and asks everyone else if they agree, to which everyone responds in unison that they do, kneeling before him. A month later, some bandits are collecting illegal taxes, wondering why Gragas has not come to collect the taxes. But we know everything that could have happened to him. Later, someone knocks on the door of the bandits, and one of them opens it, seeing that it was the protagonist, whom he insults a little. But Sir Laquis appears, giving him a tremendous blow that knocks him out, telling him that no one insults Lord Jared, and they proceed to eliminate all of them. One tries to escape, but the protagonist sees him and shoots him with some magical bullets, finishing him off immediately. Later, we see how the people of the village praise the protagonist for these actions because he is finally doing the right thing. After capturing the bandits, Sir Laquis informs the people that from now on, the protagonist will take care of them and that he will finally lift the territory of Cribia out of poverty. A month after capturing the thieves, the protagonist calls another meeting in which they talk about how well the territory is doing. Sir Laquis reports that he has recruited many soldiers and that they are well prepared for anything. Sir Orin tells the protagonist that the crops, thanks to the new methods he taught them, are working but not as much as they want, and Sir Avila tells him that they are looking for a way to improve the territory's economy by exporting materials, but it could still take a while to see the results. With this in mind, the protagonist relaxes a bit. Sir Laquis notices that he rubs his stomach in a very strange way and asks him if it was some way to lose weight, since he saw him thinner. Jared tells him yes, but he lies because it is a bug that he used in the game to inject magic into his hands and process it inside his body to make it flow faster. We also see Isabella claiming the ability from the protagonist, but he ignores her. A soldier interrupts the meeting, telling the protagonist that he had found some bandits trafficking slaves in a coal mine. We are sent a year back in time where we see a girl named Lena admiring some boys fighting with swords. When they finish, they scold her because Lena is their sister and tell her to do things well so that she can become the servant of a good noble. She says that's not what she wants and that it would be best to become a warrior like them, but the boys don't let her. Soon after, she is sold by the director of the orphanage to a slave trafficker who puts them to work in mines without mercy. Lena can't believe this is happening to her and is punished very hard for having a tantrum. A month after being locked up there, Lena meets a red-haired girl named Manny, who tells her not to blame herself for anything because since she arrived at the Mallorca orphanage, her destiny was sealed to be a slave because all the orphans from that place had the same fate. Lena, who has a very strong spirit, tells Manny that she will escape from that place at some point. Manny teases her a bit but likes her, and after that they become very good friends. Manny teaches Lena a lot about the outside world. She also tells her what she shouldn't do and what she should do to survive. It's been almost half a year already. Lena is used to hard work. She is stronger and all that. But one day Manny gets sick and Lena doesn't know what to do. She begs a guard to help her, but the guy doesn't pay attention until she tells him she will give him anything for him to help her friend. Obviously, the guy agrees, taking them out of the cell to give them food and of course he eats too. When the guy goes to take the girl away, you can imagine what happens. Manny throws a plate of hot soup at his face, burning him. The man gets angry and chases them while they try to run. When he catches them, he wounds Manny badly with a sword stroke, and she dies in Lena's arms. Lena promises that she will get out of there, even if she has to kill everyone. And when she is about to be killed, our protagonist appears, telling the man, "You complain about those burns. Try this," and he incinerates him, saving the girl. We go back a few hours in time and see how Jared led his troops heroically against the bandits in the mine, slaughtering everyone there. And thus we arrive at this moment, with the girl saved. The leader of the bandits, Ched, comes out, completely drunk, and insults the protagonist, making him angry. The protagonist prepares to attack, but Ched attacks first. However, with a technique called acceleration, Jared dodges him and starts attacking him, defeating him immediately and telling him he won't kill him because he is so weak that it isn't worth it. After the battle, all of the kidnappers and bandits, including the leader Ched, were executed and the slaves were returned to their families personally by Jared's guard. He also asked the girl to stay with him in his territory because if she returned to the orphanage, she would be sold as a slave again. The girl agrees, but with the condition that she be trained to be a warrior, not a servant. Jared agrees immediately because Lena in the game was the most feared warrior, even though she was on the side of the demons. He could show her a different path. While the priest is treating the girl, she thinks about the problems she will have with the Lord of the Mallorca territory, but she will deal with that when it happens. Then we see the Lord of Mallorca, who is a little upset about what is happening with the Cribia people, and he takes the opportunity to send Frua, a guy who was apparently Graga's friend, to avenge him that same night. We see a hooded figure moving on the roofs of the buildings and dropping something that is not known what it will be. From there we see our chubby protagonist training, or rather dying of exhaustion, while Lena is eager for more. Then while the protagonist is eating his diet herbs, he gets a letter saying everything is going well because they managed to plant some crops which will relieve some of the food costs because they will produce it themselves. Ceravilla also writes to inform him that the material trade is going well, which makes the protagonist feel proud of what he is achieving. But he is interrupted by Sir Laquis, who tells him that many monster corpses were found all over the territory, which alarms the protagonist greatly. While he is examining the crime scene, he meets a girl named Mia who asks him for help getting medicine for her mother, but the woman has an almost incurable disease called Ronella's disease. The protagonist offers to help her along with his assistants, Lena and Hayes, while they prepare the cure. The protagonist tells us that this disease only affects people who have spent a lot of time with monster corpses. He also tells us that because the woman was a chef before, she was in a lot of contact with animal corpses and her condition had worsened due to recent contact with the corpses that this guy had thrown. He was actually watching what the protagonist was doing until he was intercepted by Sir Laquis. Before the fight, Mia's mother asks the protagonist why a high-ranking double was helping a simple plebeian. He answers that his mother died and he couldn't do anything about it, and because he knows the pain that caused him, he didn't want Mia to experience it firsthand. He proceeds to prepare the cure, which he knows because it was posted on a forum when he was playing Paradise. Returning with Sir Laquis, he is chasing the bandit with whom he exchanges a couple of sword blows and almost had his neck cut, but the bandit blocked it just in time. The bandit spins and kicks him, which Laquis doesn't feel, but it makes him very angry, attacking him with all his strength and throwing the bandit far away. The bandit is surprised by how strong Laquis is, and it is revealed that Laquis's attribute is justice, and when he decides that an opponent is the villain, he becomes stronger. The bandit, seeing that he can't win, disappears, but not before telling Laquis that they will see each other soon and that they will fight at the highest level. 2 days later, we see the protagonist teaching Mia the basic concepts of magic, but he is interrupted by Mary, who tells him that the food is ready. Apparently, she is now the chef for the protagonist. As he leaves the room, Isabella appears, smiling and saying that it seems Jared is different, without explaining anything. We continue, some time later, seeing the protagonist's physical change, who is training to improve his level of magic using a method created by himself, which he calls Bug Player, as it is an error fused with a normal training method, which allows him to take advantage of the maximum mana around him while he trains. He is watched by Isabella, who tells him that she can see the error in the training he has just invented and asks him if he is really from this world because it is very strange that he can absorb mana so easily. The protagonist is scared but calms down after Isabella starts to flatter him, so he forgets what she had just said. She tells him to take it easy because, thanks to the Eye of the Mind, he is the only one who can see her. The protagonist tells her he won't give it back to her, but she tells him he can keep it as a wedding gift from his future wife, telling him that when she dies, she will marry him. Jared is scared and runs away while Isabella tells him not to go, my love. As the protagonist and Hayes head to the territory of Ronella, their carriage is attacked by bandits who, with an arrow, nearly kill Hayes. But the protagonist saves Hayes to protect himself after a rain of arrows from the bandits. The protagonist then goes out to face them, and the leader of the bandits, Tog the Mage Killer, tells him that they have been ordered to kill him by the man with the hood. The protagonist tries to attack with magic, but it's useless as the bandit's wand neutralizes the use of spells and manages to hit the protagonist, or so he thought. The protagonist used a high-level shield. The bandit starts hitting him many times, thinking that his magic had a limit, until the protagonist grabs his weapons and with a spell that increases his strength, he robs the bandit. He starts begging for his life and tells him that if he lets him live, he will give him all the information he wants. But the protagonist says he does not believe the word of a miserable criminal and kills him, proceeding to do the same with his accomplices. After defeating the accomplices, they save a boy named Archness, who according to the protagonist is a first-rate merchant. The protagonist asks him to help him trade medicine for the Ronella disease in the territory where it originated. The boy agrees but asks for 2 wishes, one of which is that he be called by his name, and the other he will say when necessary. The protagonist accepts without any problems and they continue their journey. Upon arriving in the Ronella territory, they begin their plan to sell the cure, but before the protagonist comments that he can only make 1 cure per day. Then they penalize him by preventing him from gaining experience for hours, but thanks to a bug he had found he could make as many as he wanted and gain experience without limits, thus improving his level of magic. This was done through a contract which penalties the buyer of the potion instead of the creator. With this, his first customer arrives, a bit hesitant. The man buys the cure for a gold coin after signing the contract and leaves. Archness also goes out to do some advertising and then returns with thousands of customers because the first one had been cured and people wanted to be cured too. Seeing this, Archness raises the price of the cure and tells everyone that they will sell it there today. But in order to continue acquiring the medicine, they will have to go to Cribia where it is considered a bit cheaper. A tough business for Archness. Later that same night, while they are resting, Jared tells us that they earned more than 12,000 gold coins, which in his past life would be about 12 million won. He is interrupted by Archness, who asks for his second wish, which is to become Jared's vassal and asks him to please let him create the best commercial company in the north. The protagonist tells him yes, that's fine, but under his direct supervision, which Archness accepts, and Jared tells him welcome, Deputy Archness, closing the deal on the wishes. Later, Jared tells us that thanks to the bug he had used to mix the cure, he is now level 35 in the potion mixing skill. And that thanks to that, he was rewarded with a skill called Automated Processing and another called Intermediate Mana Potion Production, which allows him to automatically make the cure, and thanks to Archness's management, the sales were better than he expected because by attracting hunters for the cure, they took care of the monsters on the road, completely cleaning the territory and making the city of Cribia famous for its medicine and its recent prosperity. Sometime later, we see Jared riding aimlessly and, according to Isabella, he is heading towards death, but he tells her not to exaggerate so much and that he is only going to the Necromancer Deluxe hideout, which terrifies Isabella because even malevolent spirits don't approach necromancers because they would end up being enslaved. But Jared tells her he won't lose the battle because he knows how to attack and defend himself from that type of being, which surprises Isabella even more, who asks him if he is really from this world because he knows so many things, which scared the protagonist a bit, and he changes the conversation. When they arrive at the Necromancer Deluxe castle, the protagonist tells us that there are 2 ways to enter the fortress. One is to climb up, but there are so many traps that he couldn't survive them. However, in the game he had found a bug in the molded design of the fortress, which allowed him to sneak into the Necromancer's treasure room, leaving Isabella amazed at the protagonist's cunning. He finds an infinite dimensional storage ring and starts to take all of the Necromancer's treasure, putting on some that will be useful for the battle. Later, we see Deluxe lamenting being sealed in that throne, unable to do anything when Jared greets him out of nowhere. When Deluxe asks who he is and how he got there, Jared incinerates him, saying, "I am the hero who will save this world." But Deluxe says, "I don't care, I will kill you right now." Jared walks away and tells us that a Lick, or a necromancer, was once a powerful mage who, in exchange for immortality and power, left his humanity behind and became one. He also tells us that only magic can kill them, but because this one is weak, he could kill it with his own magic. And so the battle begins. Jared loads his magical bullets while dodging Deluxe's powerful attacks, who, after receiving an attack from the protagonist, calls him a weak mage, but realizes that Jared had used sacred magic and is surprised to see him wearing the rings. He asks how it was possible for him to have them if he hadn't defeated him yet, getting even more angry. He prepares a spell to finish off Jared, but the protagonist interrupts his attack and says not so fast, attacking him with a very powerful fireball, preparing to keep attacking non-stop. But the necromancer summons his undead to quickly kill him. This surprises the protagonist, since he shouldn't have summoned the undead so soon. Nonetheless, he doesn't stop and dodges them all to get closer to Deluxe, leaving Isabella to deal with the undead. When the protagonist is close enough, he attacks with a technique called Lightning Spear, hitting the necromancer in the chest to stun him. He then attacks with another spell called Connected Lightning, surprising the necromancer because he had used 2 different spells in the same attack. But Jared uses the rings to increase his sacred magic and delivers the final blow, or at least he thinks he does, as the monster is still alive and attacks him when he gets close. However, the protagonist blocks him and hits him with his staff, attacking him with his sacred magic directly. The necromancer seems to be about to die, but gets even angrier and powers up, putting Jared at a disadvantage. The battle continues and the necromancer seems more powerful now, so much so that he is able to break the protagonist's shield and is about to steal his soul, but is saved by Isabella, who, even inside one of the undead, covers him from the attack, angering the necromancer, who attacks her directly, destroying the skeleton body she was possessing. A little scared, Isabella asks the protagonist if it wouldn't be better to flee, to which he responds that he will never lose against that monster, throwing himself at him. Dodging all of his attacks, even one that almost crushes him, and with high-level magic, he is able to get close to the necromancer, who is surprised that the protagonist made him believe he was weak when he was actually a high-class mage. Jared responds, "Thanks to that, my plan worked," attacking him with high-level sacred magic, finally defeating the monster. Before he dies, the necromancer asks Jared why he wanted more power if he was already strong. He responds, "I want to be the most powerful monarch on the continent of Nas," to which the necromancer mockingly says that that is absurd, and that not even the Demon King himself aspires to so much, and he dies, leaving the protagonist a very powerful bracelet in exchange for defeating him. They also find a book in which there is the formula for how to revive the souls of the undead, and the protagonist decides to do it with Isabella, or rather, to revive her, and that he already has the perfect body for her. Later, we see the protagonist carrying Isabella because she can't walk because she is so used to floating that she has forgotten how to do it. She asks the protagonist to please call her Isabel from now on, which he accepts without problem. She also asks if he knows the story of that body, to which he responds that he doesn't. Then she thanks him for giving her a better life, but the protagonist thanks her more for being such a reliable person. After that, we see the Lord of the Mallorca territory, who is gathering soldiers because he is afraid of the potential his neighbor Cribia could reach, and plans to go against them with everything he has. But Jared had already accounted for this, and he goes to the Red Dwarf's territory to try to negotiate, which he easily achieves, since the stones they were selling in Cribia were very important to the Red Dwarves, and thus they begin a good relationship ship with them, exchanging materials, in this case gold and iron for mana stones. One of those accompanying Jared thought it was a waste to negotiate, and that they should have killed everyone and taken over the dwarves' mines. But when he sees dark elves and some members of other very powerful races coming out of their hiding place, he realizes that if they had done that, they all would have died, which he ends up thanking Jared for literally saving them. To celebrate the new treaty, the dwarves prepare a feast, where while Jared orders Sir Lacquis to use all of the iron to make arrows, spears, and everything they can use in the war, and with the gold, recruit soldiers. They are interrupted by the Lord of the Dwarves, who is in favor of ending the city of Mallorca, since it is a territory only of bandits, and thus he toasts to the health of everyone. A few days later, while Jared, Isabel, and Hayes were enjoying themselves in one of the city's taverns, they hear some outsiders speaking very highly of the city and the Lord Jared's management. But among them, the protagonist recognizes two girls, one who apparently in paradise, the game was the Queen of the Dark Elves, and the other was a girl who helped the protagonist train the warriors in his army. With this in mind, he decides to recruit them, but they reject him the first time. The protagonist doesn't give up, and offers them a contract of annual gold coins in exchange for only training Lena, which they accept without objection. Later, we see a bit of the training Lena is going through, and also Chloe, the elf, who apparently was also a disciple of this woman, whose name has still not been said in the entire manhwa, but we know that she was one of the main characters in the game. And Lena's training also takes advantage of a bug that makes the experience she is acquiring feel like it is being acquired in a real battle, or in other words, the protagonist has the entire game bugged. After seeing that the crops are giving very good results and finally the level of the territory of Cribia reaches the Golden Age level, which gives the protagonist certain advances that I will mention later, Sir Orin is interrupted by the visit of the 4-rank mage called Akron, who was sent by Orcus, Lord of Mallorca. According to him, he had come in peace, but it was only a facade for the protagonist to lower his guard while infiltrating a spy with the mission of assassinating him. In the same way, the protagonist becomes aware of everything and allows them to be, even preparing a welcome party. 1 month later, we see the Mallorca army advancing towards Cribia, led by Orcus, while Jared has his troops prepare, with well-trained soldiers and some peasants whom Sir Lacquis motivates with an impressive speech before the battle, but also tells them that if anyone wants to leave, they can do so without problems. However, everyone who was there stays and shouts for the glory of Cribia, God Parsa, and before I forget, Hayes wanted to accompany the protagonist on the front. But the protagonist tells him no, because he is not going to take someone he cares about very much to a place where he could lose them, which makes Hayes blush and makes Isabel jealous, who drags her away so she doesn't bother Jared anymore. Later, a soldier interrupts to say that he could see the enemy army approaching. But it was the army of the territory of Ronella, led by their lord, who had made an alliance with orcs to erase Cribia from the map. The protagonist was already expecting this, so he had prepared very well, leaving his entire army covering the main territory, and he took care of almost a secret entrance through which Orcus's army is advancing. When the lord of the territory of Ronella returns, he delivers an incredibly arrogant speech, thinking he is the father of the chicks, until Jared removes his helmet, realizing that it is not the real one. In the direction of the other entrance, a large explosion is seen, which was caused by the protagonist, killing most of Orcus's soldiers. Only Orcus and rank mage Akron are left alive, whom Orcus asks to flee. But the protagonist casts a spell called Frozen Wind which is blocked by Akron while he falls, causing the protagonist to approach him and embrace him, causing Akron to impact the ground while the protagonist escapes through a portal that he had already prepared. Akron, with one blow and a couple of spells, pushes the protagonist away and enters the portal first, where he is impaled on spears that the protagonist had already prepared in advance. Jared calmly crosses through the portal and says, "For your sins, today I will be your judge and sentence you to death," incinerating Akron very stylishly, earning wisdom points that he doesn't even know serve any purpose. Oh, and if you're wondering about the hooded man who faced Sir Lacquis at the beginning, he was killed by the protagonist's soldiers, as they had been spying on the spy the entire time. Well, Sir Lacquis and his soldiers are being overpowered by Ronella's army, and when they are about to kill the healers, including Hayes, the soldiers who were following Jared's father appear. These were soldiers whom the protagonist had treated very badly before reincarnating, but they had come to serve the son of their former lord because they realized that he had changed and deserved another chance, adding a large number of high-level soldiers to Lord Jared's ranks, balancing the battle, or rather, killing everyone in Lord Ronella's army and making him retreat with his tail between his legs. However, things do not end there. We see the protagonist chasing Orcus, who tries to flee on his horse but is attacked by Jared with a large ball of fire, leaving him seriously injured and telling Orcus's guards not to approach him or he will exterminate them. He then starts beating Orcus many times, telling him that he will take his territory and correct all the evil he has spread because someone like him doesn't deserve to rule anything. Orcus tells him that if he kills him, someone from the Imperial army will come to avenge him. But the protagonist tells him that Count Brox won't come because no one would want to avenge the death of someone like him, especially the Empire, because to get there they would have to travel more than 1,000 kilometers and pass through 4 different kingdoms, so he doubted the Imperial army would do that, disappointing Orcus a little. Here, the protagonist asks Orcus if he has any last words before he dies, causing Orcus to attack him, but the protagonist turns him to ashes immediately and asks the others if they want to keep fighting. But they all surrender. Later, Jared and his army infiltrate Mallorca, taking complete control of the territory, achieving a great feat. But still the protagonist wanted more and they were going for the conquest of the territory of Runella as it was weak. But their plans were frustrated by the appearance of Lord Capri, someone with a lot of power both as an individual and militarily, who stood in their way and kindly asked them not to go to war. Although Lord Jared did not want to, he ended up accepting because he knew he had no other option at the moment. After that, we see Lena's teacher talking to Chloe about why Jared hadn't asked them for help in the war, and they come to the conclusion that maybe it was because as guests, he didn't want to inconvenience them. Here we learn a little bit about the Dark Elf's past, who had lost her parents at the hands of an orc, and was training to get revenge. That is all we learn at this point in time. A few days later, we see Frua, Graga's supposed friend, fleeing from Mallorca along with his people, but he is intercepted by the protagonist, who tells him to give up. Frua refuses and is attacked directly by the protagonist, but he stops time, managing to stop Jared's magic. Seeing this, Frua enters the range of the magic of his artifact, which delights the villain, who tells him that he will kill him here and now.